Hello and welcome. I'm Vidya Frazier, and I'm going to be describing here a number of common symptoms that a lot of people seem to be having recently that could be called Ascension Symptoms. These are symptoms that are both physical and psychological, and they can be both confusing and even scary at times if you're not aware of what's going on, because it can seem like there's no apparent cause for them, and that, it feels like something may be going wrong or something not good is happening in your life, and it's not true at all. So I'm going to describe these symptoms and also explain the reasons for them. So, as you may know, a lot of strange things are happening these days due to a phenomenon known as the global shift or ascension. And this is happening due to energies that are currently streaming in from our higher realms of consciousness and also from far reaches of the universe that are impacting humanity all across the globe. And these energies are here to assist humanity in awakening or ascending in a really rapid manner from a level of consciousness known as the third dimension into a much higher level known as the fifth dimension. So some wonderful things are happening for many people in this process of ascension. Spiritual awakenings are occurring, openings to new realities, profound realizations, expansions, an experience of a more authentic and powerful identity that's emerging. And all this is really exciting, but this process of ascension is also bringing some really serious challenges for a lot of people, mainly because of how quickly the process is occurring. And so for a lot of people, important losses are happening in their lives, difficult shifts that they have to make as their old limited and negative patterns and beliefs and emotions and memories that are not congruent with the energies of the fifth dimension are coming to the surface. And this can sometimes really wreak havoc in your life. What's important to understand is that these patterns are coming up for us now in order to be reviewed and resolved and ultimately let go of, so that we can make the shift into the higher vibration of the fifth dimension. It's just important to understand that that's why it's all happening. Ascension into this higher state of consciousness of the fifth dimension requires that we leave behind everything that's not vibrating at that higher frequency. So we're all in that process now. And we're living in what's been called the transitional times. And these have been predicted and described in the past by numerous visionaries and spiritual teachers and indigenous elders all over the world. And what these teachings all tell us is that the new reality structure that we're living in now and that we have been since December 2012 is referred to as the fourth dimension. And this is a dimension we'll be moving through for a relatively short period of time as we make our way into the fifth dimension. But like I say, during this time, most of us will be experiencing symptoms of the ascension process. And some of these are very positive and some are quite challenging. So I'm going to describe some of the more common ones for you to see if you can relate to them. Often when I describe them to people, they tend to feel a great sense of relief, realizing that they're not going crazy, that it's simply the ascension process that they're experiencing. And they also realize they're not alone in experiencing them, which can be really important. So, first I'm going to describe what we would just call positive experiences or positive ascension symptoms. In general, these tend to include an increase in spiritual openings and awakenings and expansions of consciousness. And a very common type of opening that a lot of people talk about is one of the heart. It's an experience of the heart opening or expanding. And sometimes it can be kind of sudden. I sometimes call it, when it's really intense, it's like a love attack. It's when love just suddenly streams in and flows through you. And it can be so powerful sometimes that you're just brought to tears. People also report experiences of a greater sense of ease, of lightness, clarity that's just happening in their lives. They'll just go through a period of this that they haven't felt before. Or sometimes it's experiences of profound inner peace, and well-being, and harmony. Again, like they haven't really experienced a lot before. Or it could be an expanded experience of oneness, or freedom, or just gratitude that just wafts through you really, really powerfully. Sometimes there's a sense of waking up to higher aspects of who they are, feeling a greater connection to their higher self. Other people speak of a greater sense of detachment about the issues in their life and their stories of suffering. They're having more experiences in the witness or the observer, which gives them a higher perspective on their life and a greater sense of neutrality about the difficult situations and relationships that they're experiencing. Another symptom that people report is increased synchronicities, even miracles. If you're experiencing this, you probably recognize these synchronicities as signs of confirmation that you're on the right path. A lot of people have talked about these. We're familiar with them from the past, but now they just seem to be happening more and more for people. Some people are experiencing more contact with the subtle worlds. There's a feeling that the veils are thinning somehow. There's more awareness of celestial beings around them, the angels, ascended masters, ETs, spiritual teachers, or they're experiencing psychic abilities coming online that haven't been there before. For some, past life memories are really surfacing. Memories sometimes of very ancient times of Atlantis and Lemuria, or even from before they were even here on the planet Earth. Very interesting kinds of memories people are having. So these are just some examples of what we would call positive experiences of ascension that people are having. And you may find that some of these are happening for you, and it could just be good to identify them, just to realize that they're part of your ascension process that's happening. So now let me describe some of the challenging experiences that many are having with the ascension process. And I'll start with the physical symptoms. So these are symptoms that often tend to have no medical explanation whatsoever. You just can't figure out. Doctors don't know what's going on. Usually they are temporary. They tend to come and go, and you can recognize them in that way. So the first one are just aches and pains in the body. Just sometimes they seem to just jump around. They start out in one place and they end up somewhere else. They don't make sense. Often the aches or the pains are in the head. It can be like sharp pain or pressure, or even a sense of buzzing that's going on that just it just feels weird. Another really common physical symptom is exhaustion. And this is an important one because people can get really concerned. It can go on sometimes for, a week at a time where it just feels like you can barely get out of bed. You're just walking through molasses. But it too will just start out of nowhere, and then, one day you just wake up and it's gone. And this is just the body, trying to keep up with you with all the changes that are going on. Another symptom are, all different kinds of digestive problems. A lot of people are finding that they need to change their diet in one way or another and to be more careful what they eat, or they're not digesting it. Another one is sleep issues. And this is really strange because there'll be times when people find they need many, many hours of sleep. People will go through 12 hours of sleep for an entire week. But then another time they just have insomnia. They can't fall asleep. Or they're waking up in the middle of the night over and over again. And this is just, another symptom that Ascension is happening. Another one is hypersensitivity, and this can be to all sorts of things. It can be real sensitivity to certain sounds or smells, certain foods, chemicals, bright lights, and these all seem to have to do with the nervous system that's trying to adjust to the new frequencies that are happening. Mind fog is another one, high-pitched ear ringing that a lot of people are talking about, dizziness, dry, blurry eyes, a thing that's just been called the Ascension flu. It's like a day of detox for no reason that you can figure out. Sometimes old conditions and injuries are reappearing. And if you've got chronic symptoms, sometimes you go through periods where the symptoms are really heightening. The thing to understand if you're having symptoms like this is that they actually make sense because your physical body is really dense. And during this period in which your consciousness is rising so rapidly, your body is attempting to adjust, is trying to keep up with you. It's having to recalibrate to the higher frequency that your consciousness is shifting into. So it makes sense. Your brain is actually being rewired. Your electromagnetic fields are being reconfigured. Your organs are shifting vibration. So there are bound to be aches and pains and other body disorders for a while this is all going on. So if you can realize that what you're experiencing are probably Ascension symptoms, it can sometimes be easier to deal with them. You don't have to worry quite so much. But of course, if you're experiencing prolonged and really uncomfortable symptoms, even if they are due to Ascension, it's really important to take care of yourself. See a doctor or health practitioner and get relief. There's no reason to suffer through these. But the main thing is to remember, be compassionate with your body when it's going through stuff. Careful not to fall into irritation and impatience with it. This just really doesn't help. Your body needs understanding now more than ever. What it's undergoing in this transition is major. This rising in frequency and shifting into lesser density is really quite a feat when you think about it. So it's really important to be gentle with your body. So these are some of the common physical Ascension symptoms that people are reporting that you may relate to, and it can just be helpful to know about them. So how about the psychological challenges? There are a lot of these, too, that people are experiencing in the Ascension process. In general, people are reporting an enormous amount of change in their lives and a lot of uncertainty. And in some cases, people's lives are just falling apart. And if this is happening for you, it's really important to understand that sometimes when you get stuck in a restrictive third-dimensional pattern, it's necessary for everything to initially become unglued and just fall apart. so that it's easier for a new and higher frequency to come online in you, so that it can create a whole new situation for you at a higher frequency. So the old thing, sometimes if you're really stuck in it, it has to just fall apart. And that's basically what's happening. So if this is happening, you just wait a bit, and you'll probably begin to see that new pieces of your life are beginning to form, and they're replacing what has crumbled and fallen apart and disappeared. So do your best to not get freaked out if your life seems to be falling apart in a lot of different ways. Just wait and see what happens. You're just making a shift into a higher dimension. Okay, so another really common symptom is periods of intense emotional upset that don't always make sense to you. This could be a period of depression, and, people say, God, I'm just so depressed these days. I'm not someone who usually feels depression. Or it could be anxiety, same thing. Or just feeling angry all the time. Or feeling despair just wafting through over and over again, and just not feeling that you understand why. Or could be a feeling of being judgmental about everything, self-hatred, or mood swings, all that kind of stuff could be happening and not making sense to you. And often these periods are due to hidden, unresolved reactive patterns from the past that have been pushed down into the unconscious at that time because they were just too hard to face. And they're now surfacing. So if this is happening, it's important to understand that the arising of these emotional patterns at this point is happening because, as teacher Jim Self puts it, you can't bring your 3D baggage with you into 5D. Whatever doesn't resonate with the fifth dimension has to be left behind. So it's being pushed to the surface now. It's coming up so you can see it and you can resolve it and ultimately release it. That's the whole purpose of this. Everything's coming up out of the unconscious, and it can just really all be in your face at once. Really uncomfortable. But if you remember, it's coming up in order to be released. It can be really helpful. Okay, so another really common symptom for people is loss of one kind or another. And this can be financial loss, loss in your state of health, loss in relationships, loss of your work, loss of home, all really important arenas loss is happening in. And if this is happening to you, remember, again, if something in your life is not aligned with the higher vibration that you're moving into, it needs to go in order to make room for something of a higher vibration. So do your best to not hang on to whatever it is you're losing. Don't keep trying to recreate it or grab onto it. Just let it go and trust that it needs to go so that you can ascend into the higher consciousness. And also be careful not to interpret loss as punishment. A lot of people kind of do this automatically when they lose something important in their life. They ask, what did I do wrong? Why was that taken from me? What's wrong with me? That's not what's happening. Loss is not punishment. It's readjustment. If events and people and situations of a higher vibration are needing to come into your life, then things of a lower vibration have to leave. That's what loss is about. So you may find that there are times in this ascension process when loss and changes and challenges just seem to be happening nonstop. I mean, this happens sometimes. You know, you barely get your head above water, you know, with one issue that you've been dealing with, and then the next wave washes over you. I just call these times periods of ascension clean out. They seem to happen from time to time, where it's just one thing after another. They can just be seen as a type of purification that's happening. You know, they're getting you ready for something in your life that's going to require a higher vibration with less emotional baggage that could hold you back. So these periods of loss and disruption can be really difficult, but do be aware that they do come to an end and that you'll be given time in between them for rest and integration. And these times are just glorious because you can just settle down and relax for a while. Okay, another very common ascension symptom seems to be challenges with relationships. And it's really helpful to understand that we are now in a period in which many old relationships are dissolving. And this is because karmic bonds are loosening. The karma with our family members, with old friends, with old colleagues are now coming to a completion. And you may be realizing that you are having less and less in common anymore with certain family members and certain old friends you've had forever. You might find that they seem to be functioning in a lower vibration than you are. You know, maybe they're still into blame a lot or self-pity or self-absorption. And you just feel uncomfortable being around them for any length of time. You just can't relate to them much anymore. Now, this can be especially hard if you have a spouse or a partner that you feel this way about. And I suggest, if you do, it may be time to really talk with this partner or spouse. See if you can clean up any old conflicts that are still there between you, any secrets or lies that you've been ignoring over the years. And just see what each of you is feeling and wanting now from the relationship. Is the relationship still working for you? Doing this, having this talk may serve to actually strengthen the relationship. You may be able to be more clear about what you would like from the relationship, how you would like your partner to respond in some different way. And it may help your partner raise their vibration to match yours in a better way somehow. Or doing this it may bring you to realize that it's time to separate and go your own way. It could happen that way. You might feel that to continue on in the relationship, you would be feeling that you're being held back somehow. What you need to realize is that not every soul on the earth now is deciding to ascend into the fifth dimension at this time. Every soul has been given the opportunity to do this, but not all are deciding to do it. For some, it would just be too difficult. They just may need more experience in third dimensional reality as they continue on in their evolutionary path. And so at death, these souls who haven't chosen to ascend at this time, they're just going to be taken to other places in the universe where the third dimension is still operating so that they can go on and further their evolutionary process that way. So some people you've been close to for a good part of your life may be part of this group. It's just good to be aware of this. It may be hard to accept this, but it's really important to let them go on their own path and for you to go on your own path and just naturally just see what happens, wherever it takes both of you. You, of course, won't stop loving them, but maybe you just don't need to spend as much time with them as you have in the past. If you're experiencing a lot of loss of relationships like this, where your family and friends seem to be drifting away, and your sense of identity has been greatly based on your roles in these relationships, you may initially feel, a sense of being really alone in life or just untethered in a certain way and confused about your sense of identity, about who you are, as these relationships fall away. But what I suggest, if this is happening, is that you just wait and see what happens. You may begin seeing that new people are coming into your life. And if this is happening, begin focusing on them. See what that's about. You may see that there are people who match you better in frequency, where you are now. But for a while, before that happens, you may be in a phase that a lot of people report about, where it just feels like there's nobody in your life you can relate to, and you could just feel really lonely. But I see this as a temporary phase that happens for people. There are people waking up all over the world now. I mean, really lots and lots of people. And they're finding each other. People are finding their tribes. And so if you're one of those people who just feels like you're out there hanging on your own and you just don't know who you can talk to, know that it's just a matter of time. You will find your tribe. So, okay, another symptom that's becoming more common is one that I would just call withdrawal. And this can initially manifest as a lack of interest in your life, a lack of passion. It can be really uncomfortable. There's just a sense of flatness about how you're living your life, a boredom with everything you're doing. And nothing much interests you anymore. A lot of people get very concerned about this. And this is a feeling that can draw you into what I call an Ascension Void. And this is where you're just feeling like you just want to be alone a lot. You don't have any interest much in meeting new people or doing things away from home. Your life can get really small for a period of time. And like I say, it can feel like something's really wrong if this is happening, but it isn't wrong at all. It's part of the ascension process. This is a period in which you're shedding parts of your third-dimensional identity. It's designed to be a time of internal focus, a time of letting go of old interests, of old ideas that you have about your life, ideas about what you thought you've wanted and why you think you're here. It's a letting go of old three-dimensional identities, a period of incubation, if you will. And again, if this is happening, no, it will eventually end. It's not going to go on and on and on. And that you'll probably feel very different, much lighter when you get out the other end of it. You may even find yourself stepping into a whole new sense of identity and assuming new roles in life that are really exciting. And the sense of passion will begin returning, which is really wonderful. So don't fight what's happening if, your whole life seems to be closing down in a way. Just flow with it. Trust that it's part of your awakening process. And as you gradually let go of certain aspects of your third-dimensional ego identity, you're going to begin finding that a more authentic fifth-dimensional identity is beginning to take hold. And that is just glorious when you begin feeling that. So, another common ascension symptom that I have found that people reported to me on is one that I just call disorientation, or sometimes discombobulation. And this can manifest in a number of different ways. It could be a feeling of of you're just not all here somehow. You know, you don't know where the rest of you is, but you're just walking around and not all of you is with you. Very disorienting. Another one is a sensation that the outer world all around you is becoming very dreamlike, surreal in some way. It doesn't feel real. Or it could be a feeling that you're living in two different realities at once. Some of these are kind of hard to put words on, but you get the feeling. It's like your whole sense of reality is shifting. And something else that feeds into this are the strange experiences that people are having with time. Time is becoming really fluid now that we're in the fourth dimension. You may find that it actually stretches and it condenses. And this can just leave you really in a strange state of wondering what the heck is going on. There can also be spatial weirdnesses that you experience, where you're misjudging distances. You may find yourself bumping into things or trying to go through a door and you bang right into the door jamb, or you're dropping things that you're trying to put on the table. Or another thing spatially that can happen is you can be suddenly aware that you don't know where you are. You're driving along in your car and you're doing fine, and suddenly for a few seconds you just draw a complete blank as to where you are or where you're headed. This happens, it's kind of scary, but just know within a few seconds it'll just shift. You'll know where you're going. Just keep driving. This happens often to me. What also complicates all of this is the experience of memory loss that a lot of people are having, and this can happen at any time. And it's also something that seems to come and go, and you don't have to be a lot worried about it usually. Something else that can be especially disorienting and strange is when you have an experience that's both uplifting and painful at the same time. Like times when everything in your life just seems to be moving along smoothly and good things are happening. It really feels good. And yet you feel unaccountably depressed or fearful. It just doesn't make sense. Or the other way around, everything's falling apart in your life. It's very frightening. And yet you're experiencing a feeling of profound peace or a lot of optimism about your life. It can get really funny sometimes. It just doesn't seem to make sense. But what's happening with this is that you're experiencing both third-dimensional consciousness and fifth-dimensional consciousness, both at the same time. Your 3D patterns are on their way out, and your 5D awareness is coming in. So you're experiencing paradoxical emotions both at the same time. So all of these experiences can be very disorienting. They can sometimes feel overwhelming, like you're losing your grip on reality, or you're out of control in some way, or going crazy, simply because it's all so unfamiliar. And in a very real way, your whole reality is shifting. We are shifting into a much higher dimension. It just feels like your old life is slipping away and that you're losing all your familiar reference points as to what's important to you, about, what you think about things, what feels safe to you, how life works. All these reference points are they're disappearing, and people just kind of grab onto things, but it's just because you're in this shift. New reference points do eventually come present for you, but meanwhile it can feel like your whole sense of security is just disappearing somehow, and that your whole identity it's feeling like you're just morphing into something that's unfamiliar. And you may also feel a sense of being consistently pushed forward out of your comfort zone, into really uncomfortable places, just totally unknown territory for you. And what you're going to find is that trust is being demanded now more than ever before. A need to trust in the flow that's happening for you. And also a need to trust that your higher self is there and guiding you. And that your inner guidance is accurate. All of this is needing to be trusted now more than ever before. And it can also be helpful to develop a greater reliance on celestial help. It is really available to us now. The angels, the ascended masters, ETs are there. Spiritual teachers are all there. They need to be asked. But they're there to help you. And you can realize that you're not alone and that you're actually being held and guided by a whole team of these beings at this point. They're all on board to help you in this ascension process, whether you're aware of them or not. So you just need to begin learning to trust this. And to just understand that everything is happening in the most perfect way for you. It's all part of your process of ascension. So the key here is just to keep going forward on your path that's unfolding before you, no matter what. Just keep remembering, you're in the middle of a profound transformational process. You're shifting from a very low vibrational dimension, the third dimension, very low, very restricted, to a much higher one, the fifth dimension, and you're doing this very, very rapidly. So it's bound to be disorienting and uncomfortable and scary at times. But if you just keep in mind that you will eventually find your balance and be able to trust that your inner guidance system is leading you well through the challenges, it does get easier. So, these are the common ascension symptoms that I've noted over the past few years. There are more. We're all unique. We have our own ascension symptoms, but these are the common ones that a lot of people in my life and a lot of clients have talked about. So if you're experiencing any of these, just know you're on track. You're just in the process of your ascension at this point. And be patient with yourself. Be careful not to judge yourself or to compare yourself to others who are on their journey. We're all here at different levels of our evolution, and we all have different soul contracts, different spiritual missions, and we're all right where we need to be. So when things get difficult, just remember this bigger picture. You're on your way home. The third dimension is behind you now. When you're making decisions, just remember, move into your heart. This is actually the new GPS in the fourth dimension, fifth dimension, and on up. It's no longer the rational mind. That was the GPS in the third dimension. Remember the old saying, always choose love over fear when you're trying to make a decision. Fear is part of the third dimension. Love is part of the upper fourth and all the upper dimensions. And always, always love yourself. This is such an important thing that we all need to learn, no matter what is happening. And just remember, keep your vibration up as much as you can. It just makes it so much easier to go through all of this ascension stuff. Think positive thoughts and feel positive emotions as much as you can. Experience gratitude whenever you can. hang out where there's lots of laughter. Laughter is a really high vibration. See if you can spend as much time in nature as you can. Keep yourself grounded. And if you can, find community, with other people who know what's going on also. So that's it. I hope this was helpful, so that you know that you're not alone if you're experiencing all this stuff. You're just not alone at all on this very strange yet enormously wondrous process called ascension. So I now send you my blessing and much, much love as you travel back home to the fifth dimension.